good evening and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. Daniel Routledge and Dave Forrester with you, bringing you all the action over the last few days in the British Basketball League. And we're going to start back with Wednesday night, the midweek game, or two midweek games, in fact. We'll begin at the Morningside Arena, where the Leicester Riders beat the Cheshire Phoenix 82 points to 70. And the big news of this one, of course, Gino Crandall not available for the team, a hand injury. They don't know quite how bad it was, although there is some concern that it may be a long-term injury. So they had to get over that. But of course, it helps when you've got Connor Washington as the backup point guard.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound good. Hand injuries are generally broken bones. And a broken bone in the hand, because the bones are so small. This is why I think Darius had one a while ago. The bones are so small, it's very difficult for them to heal properly. And obviously for a basketball player, a hand, his hands are his trade, but probably for Gino Crandall more than just about anybody, when he touches the ball more than anybody in the league in a game. So that's brutal news. That's really, really unfortunate news. Just because you don't want to see guys go down after the deadline, and it leaves teams not complete, for the end of the season. So that's tough. In relation to Leicester, yes, it's not as tough as it could be, because not only do they have Connor, but Connor has a history of demonstrating that when he's needed, he steps up. He actually generally plays better, in fact, always plays better when he's required than when he's just asked to play a bit part. So you saw at the end of the Worcester game when Gino found out that Connor led them back, 12 points. And we've seen over this week as well that he's actually, a very, very competent, capable point guard. And in fact, he's still improving. You watch him, he's adding little things to his game. He's getting in, his passing is better now. He's always had the pocket pass on the screen and roll. But now he's getting to the middle and he's looking to throw the pass to the corner as well. So he's becoming a better guard, and that's probably playing with and against, Crandall and Cartwright he wasn't there last year, was he? But with the guys he's been around. And that, gives them a get out of jail free card. The issue with it is always, however, who's the backup to the backup. Mm-hmm. That and what happens when those minutes get kind of siphoned down, unless they aren't built for anybody else to handle the basketball. And in this game,
let's actually spin it forward. Well, it was because it was reasonably close in the first half. Let's spin it forward. Leicester get in front off an 11-2 run at the start of the third. Knicks pull it back, and they had a 15-3 finish to the game. And that Washington sat down for, I think it was 3 minutes at the end of the quarter, and Cheshire went 8-0.
Yeah, and it looked like Leicester couldn't get a shot. They couldn't get the ball in. It was totally discombobulating for them. They couldn't get the ball over half court. They weren't getting a look. And, I think Rob did right to play him as much as he did. And I think having seen those 3 minutes, he's probably Connor's not going to be getting many rests for the rest of the year, which is a strength for Leicester because it gives a bit of continuity and consistency. It's also a weakness if you game plan for them properly, because it allows you to, attack that as a weakness because he's playing so many minutes. But in this game, Cheshire went up 7, and then Leicester, I think, got the look of champions in the fourth quarter. And Cheshire perplexed me a little bit because they never had a rotation in the fourth quarter. I don't know what their best five was. I'm not sure the coach knew what the best five was. Ross sat down at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and as the ball was put in bounds, I was looking at it thinking that's a mistake. He's had his rest. Washington's back in the game. Ross needs to be back in the game because he'd come out at the end of the third quarter as well. But you're riding a bit of success. You're riding the 8-0 run, so try and get him another 2 minutes, and Leicester just locked down. The other thing about missing Crandall is that I think, and it's an intangible, so it's not necessarily the easiest thing to say, I think they're playing better defense as a result. I think Leicester realised that in order to, they don't have that wild card. They're not going up and down with teams, and just seeing them as a group, seeing their defensive intensity, it seemed to me it was up to notch. Even when, at the beginning of the third quarter, and I think Rob got a technical at the end of the first half to probably fire them up. The beginning of the third quarter, the defense intensity went up a notch, and at the beginning of the fourth quarter, it went up another notch. But as I say, Cheshire's lineups perplexed me. I think Carey and Gordon were in the game. Both of them were in the game virtually the whole of the fourth quarter, and neither of them were looking to shoot the basketball. And that meant that Leicester had the opportunity to help off. There was one occasion with Matthew Bryan backing down in the post, and you actually looked and 5 Leicester guys had their foot in the paint. And you're just thinking, where are we going to get? Where is Cheshire going to get a shot? And I think the game was played the first 3 or 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. If Cheshire had kept that run going, if Cheshire had the right guys making plays at that point, it's a 12-point game. Suddenly the pressure is on Leicester and anything can happen. Instead, Leicester blew them out of the water, and Cheshire never got any coordination or cohesion back to score the basketball.
Well, in the first 7.5 minutes of the fourth quarter, the only score they got was a free throw from a technical foul on Fraser.
And from memory, they had
16.
They had the wrong guy shooting the ball from memory. I don't remember Ross shooting the ball much, maybe a couple of drives. McCall was in and out and in and out and in and out. I think he must have come in and been subbed out about 3 times, and eventually I think turned the ball over and got on sportsmanlike, and he was done. They just never, if you're going to go into what is the best team in the league and into their gym, having already beaten them once and beat them again, you have to be absolutely crystal clear in your purpose when that game gets down on the line. Who's on the court? Where is the ball going? And who's going to be taking the shots that matter? And Cheshire weren't, as far as I could see. That might have been something that obviously you can't take away Leicester's defense, but I'm saying 60% Leicester's increased intensity, 40% Cheshire. Because whatever we say, in the fourth quarter of a big game, you can't be held to a technical free throw for 7.5 minutes. You just can't, not as a professional team. You've got to be thinking, we know where we're going to go to get a basket. We know where we're going to go to get a foul. And you never got the impression in that game that Cheshire did.
The other thing was there was a number of shot clock violations, and there was a number of sort of heaves on the shot clock. Were almost shot clock violations, so they didn't really get any shot attempts.
Yeah, and I also think they turned down, there was times, they turned down shots and they moved the basketball, but the ball's ending up in the guys maybe not that confident shooting it. And that is just death against Leicester, because the minute you turn down a good shot, you've got to start all over again to get another one. And that can take you another 8 or 9 seconds of penetration and dish and throw it out. So you have to shoot the ones when you're open, and you need confident guys. And they just didn't have any confidence in the fourth quarter, individually it seemed, or in each other. And then you absolutely, the coup de grace is that you have Ross attacking the rim and he goes down. Lands on someone's foot, twists his ankle or whatever. So he's out. So suddenly the whole thing has gone from being extremely positive and you're riding a wave at the end of the third quarter, in such as basketball, 8 minutes time, you haven't scored a point and your point guard's out. You've been, blown out the fourth quarter by 20.
3 points, the lowest fourth quarter score in the BBL since 2015. Durham against Cheshire. Heron with 19.6 rebounds, his best offensive game since he's joined the Riders. Washington 15 points, 12 assists, was a plus 17 in the
the one thing on that, on Heron, that's going to be really interesting, because he's having seen enough of him now, he's a scorer. He can score on the pull-up, he can shoot the standstill 3, he can attack the rim, he can dunk, he's got the ability to do everything. The issue that appears to be with him is making the right decisions to shoot, because any player who can do everything generally has a lot of options in their bag to go to. And if he can start scoring the ball efficiently, he can create offense for them, which is going to be where they're going to have some issues without Crandall. That will be a massive boost for them. That actually might give them another string to the bow for the playoffs if Crandall comes back. Yeah.
So let's go to Manchester. Manchester 97, Worcester 90. No Brandon Anderson, no Aaron Garamipour for Giants. Lloyd Gardner coaching the Giants, and it got off to a good start for Manchester. They hit 5 threes in the first 5 minutes and led 21-8.
Yeah, they've always been keen to shoot the 3 ball anyway. The interesting thing about Lloyd is, having coached or been on the other sideline to him when he was running London City, they had a very, very smooth offense. It was very NBA style. It was 4 out, always 3-point shooters in the corner, space the court, the high screens. And if you remember, they had Lawrence and running the show, and even for a period of time, they had the big Lithuanian dudes as well, spotting up and shooting the threes at the top of the key, and the spacing was always excellent. And in theory, not having Jeramapu actually kind of helped him with that, because he didn't have to balance playing him and Ulf at the same time, and it allowed all those other guys, particularly starting guys who are all shooters, every single one of them, Cassell, Whelan, Satchel, and then Uwandi, when Uwandi comes in the game as well. It allows them to have the space to operate and the green light to shoot those threes. So that kind of didn't surprise me. I think they got a bit of a head start on Worcester, with Worcester being without Anderson. Defensively they didn't really sustain much, but offensively they did. And they looked, and sorry, I missed Johnson out before, Marshall Johnson as well. And so, yeah, it was encouraging, but it wasn't unexpected, because that's the way Lloyd's had them for 10 days. And I anticipated that he'd put his offense in, and very much about spacing, very much about shooting. And players like that, because it gives them more space and more chance to score. The key with Manchester, however, was always going to be the other end.
Well, they kept themselves in front. There was a 9-0 run in the second quarter by the Wolves that cut it down, but they just kept it a few shots ahead, even though McSwiggan had made a couple of threes in the third period. And the interesting thing to me was at the end, in the last 5 minutes, where the Wolves get in front, Jordan Williams scores and puts them up 76-75, first lead of the game, 5 minutes to go, and you think, oh, this is the test here. How do Manchester react? Lloyd calls a timeout. They come out. Whelan hits a three. Johnson takes the charge. Whelan hits another score, and suddenly they right the ship.
Yeah, a little bit about kind of new coach bounce. Everybody wants to get that win the first game, because you're basically back to pre-season, improving yourself. Johnson's a really interesting player. He has the potential, everything about him in relation to his game. He can go off the dribble, shooting 40% from three. He tries to play D. He takes charges, plays physically. He's not actually a great fit with the rest of the team, insofar as he's very different to them. But he's actually what they need. And if you get him the right way, not committing silly fouls and kind of fired up, he's a guy I think who can become a leader for you. Whelan's just a scorer. We've said this. His shot attempts to assists ratio is high, and Worcester, they struggle because they had all the little guards. They have Kimball, they had Bowneck. Elam was playing. Wilkins played a little bit, and Cassell can just shoot over them. So whenever they needed a basket, Cassell was able to get to his spot. I think Cassell had 27 or something. 27. He was able to get to his spot, and make a shot. And then, Ulf is running around chasing people down, and Johnson is, they're rebounding and they're playing hard. So I think it helped. He didn't have. It's strange because Jeramapu was clearly very good. And it probably didn't help them the following two games, but in that game, I think it probably did. It allowed everybody to get comfortable, and it kept his rotation relatively short. Played 7 players, and I think Powell played 3 fairly ineffectual minutes in the second quarter, and it was good for them. They're going to win scoring races. That's their chance. If they're in a scoring race, that's a chance. So they got to 96, they've got a chance.
So McSwiggan hits a 5-point play in essence.
Yeah, that was right.
One and a technical foul as well. And then they trade threes, and then the key play comes down with 48 seconds to go. Johnson hits a 3. McSwiggan turns it over, going the other way, and that's the ball.
Yeah, the pass, Johnson's 3 was just a big game shot, and as I say, he's an interesting player because he's made a few of them. So it's not, they've not been in all that many close games that far down the stretch, but he has been willing to kind of put himself above the parapet and make plays in the games that they have. McSwiggan, they came up with timeout, and they clearly ran it for him on the curl, but the pass was just a little bit outside of his pocket as he turned, so he didn't have it in his pocket to turn, square up, and shoot the basketball the way he wanted, and fumbled the ball. And I think one of the Manchester guys went on the ground to get it, maybe Satchel, were on the ground to go and get it and made the play basically. And that's small margins. You make the shot, you miss the shot. But Worcester struggled, I think, with a little bit of physicality in that game, particularly against Manchester's guards. Manchester's guards had an athletic advantage, and they were wound up. It was their first game with a new coach. They hadn't played for 10 days. They were desperate to play. They were ready to go. And Worcester probably ran into them at the wrong time.
Cassell 27, Johnson 18 and 13. 6 guys in double figures for the Giants. McSwiggan led the Wolves with 20. So let's move on to Friday night, and Newcastle Eagles 109, London Lions 95. Justin Robinson not in the lineup for the Lions, presumably related to the broken nose he suffered in the trophy final. But the Lions come out first couple of minutes, normal Lions basketball. They're going through Williams and Parker. They get out 12-5 after 2 minutes, but then they didn't score for the next 3 minutes, and suddenly the Newcastle Eagles come running at them.
I think 12-5 became 36-17, something like that.
Immediately went out to 19-12. They scored 14 in a row.
And I think they may have scored another 17 in a row later on. I watched this game. I actually watched the first 9 minutes back to see if I could figure out what the heck was going on afterwards. Primarily with a focus on Liggins, because obviously London are basically getting embarrassed at the end of the first quarter, getting run off the court. And Liggins throws the ball inside to Alihodzic, who kind of runs over to forward. There's no call. Liggins turns around at the referee, makes a semi-aggressive gesture, says something from probably about a foot, maybe 2 feet away, gets a technical, and then obviously 5 seconds later says something else after the ref's walked away. You see the ref's head go, oh, okay, that's another one. And you're out, and you're thinking, well, where's that come from? Because, and so you go back and watch it, and he was, his 9 minutes were curious in that game. He stood in the corner, he chucked up 3, relatively disinterested shots, which didn't come close. When a player's playing with purpose at his level, and there's no purpose to any of his shots. He did a lot of kind of pointing at other people. His body language is way off, and you just wondered what is going on. Obviously, they didn't have Ward Hibbert or Shane Walker either. It's the 7th time they're playing Newcastle this season, and they're coming off a victory, and thinking, I'm just playing it through in my head. I can't imagine any other time in Liggins' career that he will have played a major final in the middle of a season, then had to 4 days later get on a bus and drive 300 miles or fly or whatever they did, get a boat, I don't know. Maybe stay in the Malmö's on undoubtedly, but even so, and then play another meaningful game 4 or 5 days on. It's just not what you do, in the regular season in the NBA. He's played 256 games there. Maybe he might have played in the ACB in the Copa del Rey in Spain, I don't know. But so his mindset just didn't seem right. And that matters, because if you're the leader of a team, and you are the leader, if you've just been the MVP in the trophy final, you're the leader of that team, then it's on you to step into that gap and lead the guys the next game. And obviously, the only other guy who can realistically do that is Justin, and Justin's not playing because he's got, because he's not there. So it all kind of falls on him. Having been there, and we regularly used to win finals and lose the next game afterwards. Generally, the league always used to schedule it at Worcester. Generally, we always used to lose. It was like clock's ticking, around. And it can be difficult. It can be difficult to maintain it, and especially the team that you're playing against is ready to beat the team that's won. But to see him, so lethargic and it just, it wasn't a surprise. Watching those 9 minutes back, the 2 technicals were not a surprise when he got them. So that left London with kind of a mishmash of a group, because Tawaya has fallen off the surface of the earth in relation to his game. It's just, it's Space Jam. He's gone from 20 and 10 and to the point whereby he's not able to finish at all. Alihodzic has not really established himself, so they ended up playing really, really small, and it was the carbon copy of the game at London in the trophy, where, if you remember, London blew Newcastle away around the half time, and then both teams just went on and made a ton of threes for fun.
Yeah.
But it never got close, and the away coach never did anything to really change the thought of the game. And in the meantime, devoid of their salary cap busters, Robinson and Higgins, and also Ward Hibbert, who was their energy guy. Those other London guys, they played offense. Ikenwin made a ton of shots. Akodo's playing really well, but they couldn't get close to Fletcher or Edwards. And Newcastle is a team who was kind of whole for the first time in 6 weeks. Got a great game out of Louis Sayers.
Second best scoring game he's had in the BBL, 24 points.
It frustrating, it does. I'm happy for him, but I'm also, as a coach, kind of frustrated that you've played a team 7 times, and it's the 7th game that Louis gets to go off for 24 points. Because if they don't know what he does by now, it's a lack of respect to stand there as he's in the corner shooting the ball and think that just putting your hand up is enough. You got to run him off. And it's been a theme of much of my frustrations watching a ton of games this week, is the lack of willingness of teams to actually commit to understand who shooters are and to run them off the line. And I don't know if it's weariness, or I don't know if it's just where we're at in the season, but the attention to detail of some of the players has depressed me, to be honest. That's a bit 109-95 game. How can you be miserable? Well, if you've been a coach, you don't want 109-95 game. It's just not enough control.
Cortez Edwards with a triple-double, 10 points, 14 rebounds, 12 assists. He now has 2 of the last 3 triple-doubles in the BBL. I have one with Worcester.
He is, just on a kind of on a macro basis, he has to be an all-time rebounding guard. I don't know. I think his numbers last year, I think he was averaging 6 or so a game. This year he's in the top 10 for rebounding, which is remarkable given that you're 6'2" and you're playing the 2 guard. I'm not sure, going back, how many proper guards have rebounded like him. That is it's something which I don't think we've seen for a number of years.
No, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure one will come to me later.
Well, Drew Lasker will tell me that when he was young, he used to do it.
Yeah.
And he had a 17 rebound game 2 years ago, and all that stuff. But even so, I mean, his numbers are, incredible rebound. And he gets difficult ones as well. He doesn't just get ones which land his hands. He goes up to get them, So they're really valuable because you can start the fast break with the ball in his hands.
So let's go to Worcester, where the Wolves were playing Bristol, and it finished Wolves 62, Bristol 82. Still no Anderson, and I was watching this game back, and scoring was tough to come by in the early stages of the game. I mean, Flyers got out to a 12-4 lead, but it took them 5 minutes to get there. It was 18-8 after 9 minutes, and you're thinking, gosh, I can't see how this game is. I knew the score, obviously. I can't see how we're going to get to that sort of scoring level at the rate they were going.
No, we're still very flat in this game. I mean, they competed, and eventually they got run off the court in kind of the 3rd and the 4th quarter, and they looked tired. But there was, Anderson's a big piece for them. There's a lot of pressure on Kimball, who's a rookie, to be a creator, and a lot of pressure on Jordan Williams, who's playing lots of minutes this year and is having to create, score, rebound, and do lots of things. And I think they got to a point, they got to the point where they had a little run where they were all coming together, and the whole season is kind of 8 weeks behind everybody else. So they're now going through the January, February kind of dog days, the grinded out. And on top of that, they're having 3 games in 5 days because they've got all these games to catch up because of COVID and all of that. And I think it's wearing on some of the younger guys, and particularly when, teams now, particularly all the younger, less experienced guys, they're playing for the playoffs now. Every game is not a must win, other than for Leicester, and even now it's probably not for them. Every game for these guys is not now as much a must-win in their own minds. Now, the coach's mind, it's definitely must-win. We got to win every game. We got to get the highest seed we can. But as far as the players are concerned, they will be looking at this as people who have come through the NCAA system and been through the AAU system in America and thinking, well, look, we get through the regulars. We got to be at our best for the playoffs. I'm not going to kill myself for 3 games in 5 days, and doing all this stuff. And that isn't so much a physical thing, because when they're on the court, they play hard. Everybody plays hard. If you don't play. But it's a mental thing. It's your mental approach to each game, that kind of weariness that comes with each game. And you've seen virtually every team this season appear at times mentally fatigued, with the exception of Leicester, I think. But they've had the fact that they got knocked out of both trophies, cup and trophy, to sustain them. So they've had the target of winning the league. And I'm not sure that anybody else in the league really has. So, the competitive stuff at the moment is really at the bottom for the top, kind of the bottom 8th spot and the 7th spot. Everything else is about, all the other stuff is rhythm. And Worcester, without Anderson, feeling a bit sorry for themselves, coming up against a physical Bristol team with not that much physicality on their side. In reality, Parks is a bit undersized, even against those guys like Del Pesh. He's more ground-bound. Del Pesh is a jumper. And Jordan Williams playing so many minutes. Burns hardly playing at all, which is curious. They just ran out of gas from what I could see.
Yeah, well, they got in front because they had a 12-0 run either side of half time, and they were up 10. And it was one of those things where I was sort of looking at this thinking, have I got the score the right way round? Because I can't see what's going to happen here. And then they were still 9 up with 4 to play in the 3rd quarter. And then Ben Mockford and Teddy caught fire and flies with 14 points in about 3.5 minutes to end the 3rd quarter. They go from 9 down to 5 up, and then they started the 4th quarter. Lockett 3, Mockford 3, Mockford 3, and it's a 12-point game and a massive swing.
And they were getting some of them off transition as well, and that's always important. I think McSwiggan made some shots in this game as well from memory, and he's probably the one guy who was a little bit up and down earlier on. He's been injured, he's come back, but he has he's a shooter. He's a little bit like Sayers. He's a shooter and gets into his rhythm, can knock shots down. Defensively, he probably has a physical disadvantage against some of those teams, some of those big Bristol guys. And, and we know that Mockford can break games open. That's what Mockford does. But I just thought offensively, they just got ground down and they didn't seem to know where they're going. And, their kind of get out has always been, they'll go to Jordan Williams in the post. And Jordan Williams has carried them many times this year in the post, but you can only do that so often because you're putting so much on that guy's shoulders. And against Bristol, where you've got Edozie banging you, you've got Del Pesh doing the same. Then you've got Baker coming in. Then you've got Thomas Edwards, who's about the same size. That's a long night. And I just thought they ran out.
They did 7 minutes without a field goal in the 4th quarter, which was their own doing.
And it's the run backs the other way which kill you.
So let's go to Glasgow 104, Manchester 94. Grammy Paul with a back problem, so
Johnny Bunyan.
A long bus drive to Glasgow, not what you need. So he wasn't there. But again, I almost want to spin this forward to the second half, because Delph sort of allowed them to hang around a little bit, the Rocks, in the first half, but the Giants. 7-2 finish to the first half, up 13 at halftime. And to be honest with you, I was doing commentary down in Plymouth. I didn't even look at that one again until right near the end. And suddenly I was like, wait, have I got the score the wrong way around there? Because in the 3rd quarter, Rocks, led by Bunyan, go nuts from the 3-point line.
Yeah, and actually you listened to Jack Hudson did a short interview on Twitter, which was put on Twitter afterwards. And I think Lloyd Gardner might have as well. And he said, at half time, coach was telling us they're not going to keep missing these shots. And again, Glasgow, Manchester, I'm guessing they played twice in the trophy. I'm guessing this is 5 or 6 times they've played now. You've got to know who's playing. Now, Glasgow's substitution pattern in this game was pretty interesting.
Well, there wasn't one in the second half.
That's the point. I think it's probably, if you can go through your stats, and I guarantee you can't answer this one. Is that the greatest ever differential between the number of players who played in the first half and the number of players who played in the second half? Because there was 10 who played in the first half and 5 who played in the second half, and you can't have less than 5, and you can't have many more than 10. So, and Gareth's bench in the first half hadn't done the trick, and they got rolling, and Johnny Bunyan got rolling, and Johnny Bunyan had 20 plus points in the second half, and Johnny Bunyan goes to 26 points. Everybody else is feeling good about themselves. Then Glasgow have every shot, because when they run their system, they run it well. And the problem Gareth's got is that one or two of the wrong guys in the wrong place, it doesn't work. But the right group running together, playing against a certain level of defense, and Manchester's level of defense is probably the friendliest in the league, if we're being honest. It can work, and they got a ton of shots, and they've got the shootouts, because when Bunyan's hitting, Keeling's hitting, Gareth is there, and he made the smart move, and I love it, because it's something that Fab used to do all the time. You got a unit that's running, you just run with it, you just keep going. You don't get tired when you're playing well, you don't get tired when the shots are falling. You don't feel the need to do that, you just keep going. And if those guys on the bench want to play, they have to get better. And that's what he did.
Well, Rock's 9 of 11 from the 3-point line in the third quarter. They won the period 33-16, and then just kept going in the fourth quarter. Same again.
Yeah,
Johnny Bunyan.
I'm happy. I'm really happy for Johnny, because he's been around a long time, and I remember, when he came into the league, and all our guys would kind of look at him and think he's about 5'9", he's stocky, he's short, he can't be in our league, he can't guard anybody. And we used to, certainly for the first couple of years, we used to go at him. It'd be like Johnny comes in the game, he wasn't playing lots of minutes, it'd be like 1-4 low, everybody else get out of the way, Fletch or whoever was our point guard go at him, and he kind of, and there's ways that people can go that way. They can kind of shrink away from it, or they can kind of battle through it. And he battled through it to the point whereby, within about 2 or 3 years, that stopped. And it stopped because he was, it took him, he committed a couple of hard fouls to show that he knew he was getting picked on. He wasn't very happy about it. Yeah. And that type of thing, that type of toughness is why he's still in the league 10 years on. I don't think he's been particularly healthy this year, but to see him have a breakout game, to see him give that team what they want, to remind, people just how good a shooter he is. I'm really happy for him. There was one game about 8 years ago where, he's coming off the bench with another British kid called Alex Marcatolio, played at Notre Dame, I think. And those two were just playing 12 or 15 minutes a game, and they were destroying teams off the bench, making shots, probably 8 or 9 years ago now. And I remember I had to tell Flanoy that he had to guard him, and he couldn't believe that I was asking him to guard Johnny Bunyan, because he felt a little bit insulted. This is a 21-year-old kid, who just shoots a bit, And the reason he had to guard him was because I didn't trust any of the other guys in our team to respect him enough to defend him. And for him to have that game and to show what he's got, and as I say, to get healthy and to have that talent around, I'm absolutely delighted for him. So shout out Johnny Bunyan.
Career high 26 points, his best efficiency at 31, 5 of 7 from behind the arc. Also a shout to Delph with 32 and 18. Which is
this is the game where they missed Jeramapo because they needed a 7-footer to guard him, because Manchester without I'm not sure he's much of a shot blocker, but they have no rim protection. Ulf is undersized, he's 6'7", and Delph's got long arms, so Delph can basically catch the ball and shoot where he wants. It's probably a bit late in the season for this now, but it seems to me that with Ulf, they need to get Ulf to front. They need to have him front in the post, because he works so hard. He's such a capable, committed defender. They need to get him in front of the post and hope that somebody else can come around and get people coming around the backside so he can outwork people. Because just having him stand behind guys who he's given up 2 or 3 inches to, it's not fair on him. He's not. It's a mismatch. So you're gonna have to send a double team anyway. Front of the post with David Ulf, please, Lloyd.
Well, we'll move on from that one now to I didn't quite mention Delph's only the 3rd time in the last 10 years a Rocks player has had a 30-point double. The Plymouth Raiders 89, Sheffield Sharks 74. 4. Pretty low scoring early on. It was a bit attritional in the opening exchanges, but not a great deal in it either way. Sheffield did lead by 6 at one point, but there was never really that much in the game in the first half.
No, it was a little bit of a malaise game, wasn't it? And you were waiting for Plymouth to bounce, to come out aggressive, having lost the final. Sheffield had obviously been watching that, Sky Sports baby, big things expected. Yeah. And they made some plays early, but it was it's probably a little bit hard. It appeared to me that neither team was too invested in the game in the first half. They played, the first quarter was tight. Second quarter, Tiba calls a timeout after about a minute because Plymouth come out, I think, with a bit of a rollicking from PJ, and they make a couple of plays. There was no one at any point in the first half who you thought was going to taking this game by the scruff of the neck. It was kind of the way the ball was bouncing. And then in the second half, I think the game twisted a little bit, just moving on forwards on Helmsley getting his fouls. And Atiba didn't trust him with the fouls because he took him out when he got his third foul, and he brought him back early in the fourth quarter, and he got his fourth foul and he took him out again. And that really, he's the scorer that you probably need against that team. And also, Plymouth's energy picked up, and Morsell and McGill in particular were difference makers in the game. I'm not sure there's much more to it. You guys covered it quite well on TV. There wasn't really that much more to it than that. It was just a slightly deeper, slightly better team. And I thought the minutes that Helmsley didn't play were a major problem for Sheffield because once McGill and Morsell got going, they were going to have to get into the 80s. Without Helmsley, they were never going to get into the 80s.
No. So the Raiders had first 10 points of the third quarter. They had an 8-0 run around the last break, and they were up 13. And Sheffield did make a little bit of a run of it in the fourth quarter. They had a 14-2 spell, but then a couple of neighbour 3-pointers.
Plymouth are interesting, though, because Plymouth's a team which have fully now transferred from being Ashley Hamilton's team to being Ricky McGill's team. You can actually see it. And this is what teams go through during the part of the kind of the course of a season. And in early season, they had to be Ashley Hamilton's team. They didn't have any. They had LVC playing 40 minutes at the point guard. Porter Bunton was young, was a rookie. They're playing games on and off, and Ashley kind of led that team forwards and built that up. And then McGill came in, and I won't say there wasn't a power struggle, but McGill struggled early to get a handle on it. There was still doing that. Morsell came in as well. And sometimes it takes an injury, it takes an illness for a team to kind of progress. Sometimes it's crazy, and that's not to knock Hamilton, but suddenly they're so much more offensively aggressive with McGill. They're playing a lot more modern. They're playing a lot more screen and roll. He knows which are his shots, when to take them, and he is a shot maker. And we never saw that for the first 6 or 7 weeks. No, so now PG has the advantage of being able to start with McGill and Neighbour and have this kind of wonderful kind of spacing on the court, everything ticking over. And then to bring Ashley in as to kind of the focal point of his second unit, where he can give him the ball in isolation, because Ashley's one of the few players in the league, if possibly the only player in the league, who has a mismatch, whoever is guarding him. It's either it's someone too big and he's too quick and he can get to the hoop, or it's someone too quick, too small, and he'll post him up and he can score. Now, I can't think of anybody else in the league who is in that category. And the last one I can really think of was probably Pierre Hampton, who would go wherever the ball, wherever the team needed him. But what that means sometimes is that you play through that guy too much, because that guy's, he's always got a mismatch. So he's always looking to go, and it's not a bad decision for him to go and attack. And now if they can use him as part kind of to lead that second unit and then to flow back in with the first unit when they come back, they're going to be seriously dangerous, because he's good enough. He's a good enough player that he will adapt to what they need him to do. And when things get sticky and when the guards aren't getting anywhere, the advantage you have of giving the ball to somebody who you know can go get you a bucket or get you a foul And, we had Charles Smith, so, I know all about that. Give him the ball, you make a play. It doesn't really matter what everybody else is doing. It doesn't really matter what system you're running, you've got a shot. So having McGill kind of in charge of the team and playing more up-tempo, having the opportunity for Hamilton to kind of pick his moments, that makes them a formidable team. And that's not even mentioning eBay and his defensive presence. Sorry.
No, let's go on to Saturday now. Bristol Flyers 62, Leicester Riders 76. Obviously, still no Gino. Connor didn't get a break this time. He played the full 40 minutes, and he scored 10 points early on. A crazy three on the buzzer in a tight first quarter. But then Leicester started the second period with 14 of the first 16 points, and they're out to a double-figure lead.
I hope Bristol let Leicester off the hook in the first quarter. When you see it, when you've got a team coming off a good win the night before, you expect that they might get tired in the third and the fourth quarter, but you expect them to be coming out firing the first half. You're in rhythm. You've just played. You're feeling good about yourself. Everything's the way it's meant to be. And Leicester offensively in the first quarter were not good. They couldn't really get a look. Heron made a couple of individual plays, but they were getting nothing out of their offense. And then, probably 2 minutes to go in the first quarter, ball screen at the top. Bristol's big doesn't get up. Connor pulls up, hits a 20-footer.
Yeah.
Next possession, ball screen at the top. Connor dribbles to his left. Bristol's big doesn't get up. The guard doesn't get over. Nowhere near him. Connor swishes a three. And of course, with that confidence, then Connor makes a ridiculous shot on the buzzer. And so, and they had 15, maybe 15 or 16 points at that
15,
point.
15 was that.
And that's 7 for Heron and 8 for Washington or something like that. It was that level. And they were shot and they couldn't get anything in half court. And I'm sitting there looking at this and thinking, what part of Washington on the high ball screen getting up to him is not on the top of your scouting report? It must be, it must be. Andreas has played against Connor so many times. So if that's the question, well, what are those Bristol guys doing? And what and are they being held accountable, and are they accounting for themselves as to for letting that go? Because Leicester could not get a look.
There was the one you talked about there, where I think it was a Dozy, and he was so far back that it was like, well, what are you doing there? Because I couldn't. He was in no man's land basically.
And they must have rules for and it becomes all the more egregious because Bristol's got 3 guards. They got 3 good guards. They got Josh, they got Teddy, and they got Ben Mockford, right? The first quarter of the game, Corey Johnson was denying Josh Wilshere the ball, right? Corey Johnson is 6'5". That's a hard job. You're having to work really hard. But Leicester's plan was, okay, Wilshere isn't touching the ball early. Let's make them go through somebody else. That was their plan. Okay, now if Corey Johnson can deny Josh Wilshere, Bristol got 3 guards on, and Connor Washington is there, was Leicester's 1 guy. How is it that Connor can be that comfortable through the entirety of the game? It took until about 2 minutes to go in the third quarter when Ben Mockford actually started. I don't know if it was when he got the assignment, but Ben Mockford really actually started trying to get into play some proper defense, aggressive defense, not proper defense, because the other guys are playing positional defense. It's not their fault if the big doesn't get up on the screen. But there was no aggressive defense to try and take him out the game. Now you wouldn't do that normally because you know that Gino would have the ball in his hands. But with 40 minutes at Connor, that has to be a weakness that you can attack for Leicester. Bristol had the bodies to do it, and they didn't do it, and that surprised me. So they let them off early, and then Leicester went on their run, and Bristol went cold for I think the first 5 minutes of the second quarter. Josh Rogers made a couple of plays at the end of the first quarter, but after that, Bristol's offense was basically stagnated, and Leicester went on the run, and the ball movement was excellent. Jamel made a 3 in the corner, and it was just a Leicester basketball game. They don't have as much room for error without Gino, so Bristol were able to come back. Wiltshire made a couple of 3s and get back close to half time. But the cadence of the game
the thing
was in Leicester's favour.
Yeah, they did that, and then they let Johnson hit 2 3s at the other end. They got it back to Wiltshire's 3s, gets it back to 1 point, and then Corey Johnson gets two pretty decent looks by his standards, knocks them both down, and Leicester up 5 at halftime.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. That's the other thing. Obviously, watching those standstill jump shots from Corey Johnson, from William Lee, from Josh, from Connor Washington, and you're just thinking, these guys can shoot. These guys make rhythm shots all the time. How are they? What they don't do as well is, certainly in relation to Lee and Johnson, is to put the ball on the ground. And if they beat you and they make a move, they still only get 2 for it. You only get 2, they don't get 3 for it. So why are you getting beat like that? The other thing was the end of the quarters, and Forrester's end of quarter rant. Connor made the 3 at the end of the first quarter. The end of the second quarter, there was a foul by Baker, probably 20 feet away, 2 foul shots on the buzzer. That was a 5 point. That was a 5 points in the last second of each quarter. That was the difference at halftime.
Yeah, and then in the second half, Washington Johnson makes some shots, and Leicester pull out to 13, and they're pretty comfortable from there.
Yeah, I thought William Lee was excellent in this game. I thought he made the plays that they needed them to make. He has this kind of feathery. He doesn't really look for his own shot that much, but he has this ability to kind of take one dribble and rise up and shoot it, and it's going in. At least I know it's going in. Some of the guys who were guarding him probably didn't think it was going in. And he was excellent. But, Connor had 22 points, and Connor's playing great. And Connor, 22, 9 and 7. And Connor we all know how capable a point guard is. He is. But I'm going to be straight, no point guard in this league, not Justin Robinson, not Ramon Fletcher, not Karan Ross, should be able to score the ball that efficiently when they are playing all 40 minutes and they are the only de facto ball handler on their team. None of them, because there are things you can do to attack that matchup, to disconcert that player, asking the opposition to do different. I just didn't see Bristol do any of that. And out of Connor's 9 made field goals, I'm guessing 8 of them were jump shots. I can't remember him making a layup. No. 8 or 9 of them were jump shots. And you can take away jump shots. Sometimes you've got to sell out to do it, and you might give up something else. But I'm quite happy giving up something else to make him put the ball on the ground twice, get into the middle, throw it to somebody else, maybe not Corey Johnson, but anybody else, and see if he can make a play. But not because he can't make the play, but because it wears him down. It doesn't wear him down, just allowing him to stand there and shoot. There was one at the corner at the end, I think it was Adozie again, who got matched for whatever reason, ended up matched up. And Connor's in the corner, and Adozie's out there, and he's at guarding distance with his hand up, and Connor just shoots it. Because, it might be guarding distance, but it's not dissuading him from shooting the ball. So you may as well not be there. You got to get right out, force him to drive, and then hope that your help is there. But anyway, Leicester really handled the basketball game well. Heron is close. You can see it. He is close. He has every tool that they need. As I say, he's just got to start picking the right tools more often. But he's only had 6 or 7 games in that team. So, you can't criticize him for that, It's going to be a little bit of trial and error. And the big thing for them is that, winning those 2 basketball games this week has demonstrated that what their focus is, which is the league. And now they're at the point, which will be crucial for them, whereby they may be able to win it early. If they can win it early, and you get those 3 or 4 games, whereby you don't really care about anything apart from being healthy and staying in rhythm, that is a fantastic boost, because it's a massively different thing going into the playoffs, having gone all the way to the last game on one leg to win the league, as it is to kind of happily rolling into them having 3 or 4 games of everybody being comfortable.
Well, they qualified for the playoffs. First team to qualify for the playoffs. And
I think to quote the Simpsons. I'm sorry about this. They are now my shoe-in for the league. I haven't got a shoe. If I thought about that quicker, I would have had a problem.
Let's move on to the game that's allowed you to find your shoe on Sunday, which is London Lions 72, Worcester Wolves 84. No Justin Robinson still. Liggins was on the stats, but not on the court. and we'll get to that in a bit. But let's deal with the game first.
I think we should get to that now.
Let me run through the game and then we'll spend the time on that. So McSwiggan with the 4-point play. Wolves score the first 11. Lions kind of drag themselves back into it a bit. But then Wilkins hits a couple of threes and they're 28-18. And to be honest with you, that was the sort of story of it. They would pull it back a little bit and then the Wolves would pull away again. And actually, it was reasonably comfortable for Worcester over the course of 40 minutes.
They never looked in any sort of difficulty. It was as perplexing a game as I watched all season. I'm not, the start. Spencer started. Now Spencer's hardly played. He had 3 points in 25 minutes in Newcastle on Friday and looked, didn't look at the races at all. He had a pretty underwhelming period of time in Leicester last year. He signed for London around Christmas. He's been on the bench in some games, played the odd few minutes here, and he started, and that surprised me. Then Tawaya started, and Tawaya again, just struggled in this game. Couldn't. I think he made one hook shot. Couldn't miss a couple of foul shots. Just nothing going for him. Liggins didn't start, although he was on the sheet, and that left kind of a lot of heavy lifting on Ware and Parker and Williams, and they didn't seem up for it. Dirk wasn't kind of jumping around the way that he normally is. Ware, I don't know if it was because he's trying to be more of a point guard, but he wasn't the aggressive guy he needs to be. He's a scorer. He's not a setter-up guy. He's a scorer. He can pull up, he can shoot it, he can get to the rim, particularly on his right hand. And they made plays here and there. But more than anything, their defense was just there. They were just there. Jordan Williams had his way with whoever was the center for the Lions, be it Ali Hodzic, be it Tawaya, or Okoro. Okoro has hardly played, and suddenly you put him in the game in the first half and expecting him to make plays. So he's realistically London's probably 14th or 15th man, and he's in by the end of the first quarter. So just a shout out for Jordan Williams. He probably, I know he's a little bit undersized, but if you take into account that Ali Hodzic was in the GB last 14, it's difficult to see, Jordan Williams not getting a look in camp in future, because the way he's playing at the moment, a little bit undersized for national basketball, but his facilitation is so good that you might be able to get away with some minutes with him in there, and he is just a low down low. So he dominated that game. Worcester were coming off 2 losses. Yeah. I mean, just dominated the game. But London, even against Newcastle, there was a little bit of, they were making shots. The guards were flying around. Akodo didn't come on until towards the end of the first quarter, which surprised me because he's been their best player in the last few games. And they just never got any degree of rhythm. And they're playing without, 3 of their top 8. Ward Hibbert is now in their top 8. Ward Hibbert, Robinson, and Liggins. But this is the reason that you have 16 players. If these guys are sitting there all season, cheering along and getting the medals and picking up their checks, then they have to be ready to play when their number is called. And that is still a solid BBL group of players. We've had Ed Lucas being cited for the first time in months, which is nice, because he's made some shots. Good for him. He came back and he was the one who actually showed up, and it seemed to me that he was ready for the game, motivated to show, look, this is what I'm here for. This is why I'm around. Don't forget about me. But everybody else, and I don't put it on Dirk Williams, because Dirk Williams has carried them a lot this year, and he can't be doing it the whole time. Everybody else, they just weren't there. And, again, it might be a little bit of, maybe kind of supporting what you already know, or what you find out later, and you look back and you think, why is all this going on? They're technically, they're not out there running for the league. I don't think they're interested in the league.
No. So let's get to the post game.
Yeah, please.
Kevin Ware sends out a tweet after the game, and it says, "You got to be damn near Kobe to tell your coach you ain't checking into a game, right?" Question mark.
How many guys on the London team didn't check into that game, Dan?
2.
Which two?
Andre Lockhart
Yeah, and it's Andre Lockhart in telling Vince that.
and
Who's the
DeAndre
other one?
Liggins.
DeAndre Liggins. It's well, and again, it's a little bit of confirmation bias because you know what happened in the game, and you think, oh, wow, that makes sense. So what's happened? Reading between the lines, and I think hopefully I'm qualified to do this. And if I'm wrong, I will accept every brickbat that comes. Vince decided to bench Liggins for the beginning of the game because of what happened at Newcastle on Friday night, which was clearly unprofessional, getting himself thrown out of the game after 9 minutes, and he wasn't ready to play. DeAndre Liggins didn't like it and told Vince that when it was his turn, when he was called on to come in the game, that he wasn't playing, and stood on and sat on the pedal cycle, riding the pedal cycle for the rest of the game. I don't think there's any other way you can read that message. That brings about 1,000 other questions. 1,000 other questions. Firstly, players have egos. DeAndre Liggins, every player has an ego. The very best players have the very biggest egos. Apart from probably Tim Duncan. DeAndre Liggins was a MVP last week. He has the best resume of anybody in our league. He has a responsibility, having been the MVP last week, to lead that team. He hasn't. He hasn't. On Friday night, he didn't. And today, on that tweet, he hasn't. Now, there's 2 reasons that can be that way. One, he's had a very bad week, and his head's in, and to use the colloquial, his head's in the shed. Okay, that can happen. Potentially, something might have happened at home, who knows? He's not used to playing a big final, then have to come back and get back on the road and do it all over again. All those excuses, but you don't ever tell the coach you won't come in. The second thing is that he's just flat out disrespected his coach, and he's saying it's either me or the coach. Because I don't know how Vince can get back from that. And Vince can talk his way around anything. Vince can find his way. He's known so many players in this league, and you have to have a lot of respect for Vince for making a determination in the first place that he wasn't going to play him. Because he's saying, look, this is my team, this isn't your team. If you're going to let our guys down that way, then I'm going to show our guys that that's not acceptable. And you're going to have to come off the bench in this game. He may not have sold it to Liggins like that, but that's a matter for Vince and his team. And he's a coach, he's quite entitled to do that. And for Liggins to then turn around and say, oh, no, I'm not going to play, that is as close to an unrecoverable situation, because it's a power struggle. So, they're pulling the string. Liggins is pulling the strings away. It's almost to the point whereby, if it was happening in the NBA, it would be get this coach out of here. That's the way it is. That's the way. I ain't playing for him. I want somebody else. That's never happened in the BBL. There's a reason it's never happened in the BBL, because you're not getting rid of a coach in the BBL. You're on the first playing home. If you pull something like that, you're in breach of contract. You're off. You're out. You're done. You're gone. Now, London's a different dynamic to everybody else in the BBL, because London has American owners. London has superstar players. London has big budget. London is investing this, that, and the other. So you can only see this as Liggins saying, look, this coach who's been around here for 30 years, we went and won a trophy last week, and I ain't respecting him enough to get him to go in the game and play. What are you going to do about it, 777 partners? That's the way it reads. I mean, it's a brutal, and that destroys team chemistry. It destroys everything, because all those, that tweet from Kevin Ware says it all. Wow, how can he get back from that? He's took all the personal accolade of the final, the MVP. Everybody's been really impressed with the way that he's knuckled down in the BBL, and he's shown desire to play and to make plays. No doubt well remunerated, but even so, he's shown that everyone's been impressed by that. But he couldn't manage the whole year. And then you end up with something like that. And now every single member in your team, when you walk through the door at practice on Monday, is looking like this. What's he going to say? What's he going to do? How is it going to be sorted? Are they going to patch it up? In which case there's always a residue, or is there going to be some degree of fallout? I don't know. I feel for Vince. I think that's just, It's just wrong. It's just wrong. You know, they go out, play, have an argument afterwards, you know, throw your toys at the pram afterwards. Don't let down your teammates and don't disrespect your coach. And if that tweet is something entirely different to what it means, then I'll expect
That's
you.
the other caveat to it all.
If I expect you to delete that last 5 minutes of rant.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, we'll delete that from the internet
what
at some
that
point.
tweet was about, but it's just the juxtaposition of it to everything else that had happened in the 2 hours before.
But let's be clear. Yeah, he was on the score sheet. He didn't play.
Yeah.
You know, well, yeah, okay. I have a confidence interval in relation to my interpretation of that set of circumstances.
Yeah.
So I'll stick with it.
And we'll, when it comes out that it was Dre Lockhart,
yeah, when it comes out, look, I've got Dre Lockhart's messenger. I'm going to be on to him in a minute and find out. Dre, it wasn't you, was it? No. If there'd been any other person other than Dre Lockhart, Dre is doing whatever you want. Dre is great. Dre is the ultimate team guy. The ultimate team guy. A ton of time for him.
So let's go on back to actual games being played. Yes, Glasgow Rocks 83, Surrey Scorchers 99. Scorchers got up early on 10-5 and led for most of the half, but not by much. And I actually looked up the Rocks offense at halftime because they had 50 points on the board at halftime. And for the first 24 games of the season, they were averaging 20 points fewer than they have been for the last 5.5 games.
Yeah, I think Delph has helped a lot in relation to their offense. I'm not sure he's helped that much in relation to their defense, but he's certainly helped in relation to their offense. Gives them, to the point whereby Gareth isn't taking them off the floor. And obviously Keeling, we know Keeling is a scorer. The difficulty was that I didn't see them ever winning a scoring race with Surrey. And Tony Hicks was probably the reason for that. I didn't watch all of this game because there's another the London game was going on, and that was captivating viewing. Insofar as we're watching a meltdown, but what the parts of it that I did catch seemed to be the Rocks giving up the lane and Surrey scoring at the rim, and then Martin McLemore getting going. I don't know how many points in the paint they had, but I think Tony Hicks had about 28 points in the game.
25 and 7 Hicks.
And they just didn't have a way to defend him. It's an athletic mismatch with him and Johnny Bunyan, and Pondo is really struggling when he comes into the game. I'm not sure. Did Brandon play? Is Brandon?
I haven't got the minutes here to
no, I'm not sure if Brandon
I don't remember seeing him.
No. So they had kind of that. Even Keeling is more of a scorer than a stopper, So Surrey had the advantage. This is a kind of a running theory, a saw. Rickman was hurt, no Ryan Richards. So suddenly they've got all those guys ready to play and ready to run. Yeah. Lacey James is the 5. Then you've got Teo and McLemore and Hildreth and Hicks and Walsh coming in, and they're all playing fast and they're all getting up and down, and they know they're going to give up a little bit at the rim, but they're going to have the scoring to survive that, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah. They just made enough. They made more shots. It was probably McLemore that took, from what I could see, that took them over the edge. He made kind of key shots at key times, and got comfortable.
They just had enough of a lead, and then at the start of the fourth quarter, Walsh actually made a couple of plays.
Yeah,
they went out to 9 or 10, and then once it got there was no way back. I don't know if you've seen this, by the way, because it came out just before we started recording, but the Rocks have announced that Delph and Keeling are leaving.
I haven't seen that. Yeah. Shoot.
Now I saw a thing from Keeling which said thanks for everything. It's been great, sort of thing, but obviously
I haven't got enough about me to wait for another month until finish the season out, which I contracted myself to do.
Well, to be fair, the Rocks put it out first, so it sounded like they were happy for them to leave, sort of thing.
Well, it might be. They might be getting out of paying them some money. Everything's financially is relevant nowadays. But here's the thing: if one guy goes home because of circumstances, you understand it. It just happens to be the 2 Americans.
Yeah.
They happen to go home at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, how we? Sorry, that's a Geordie phrase. How we, man? Really? I get that there's a pandemic going on, but we're coming out the end of it. I get that it's been a horrendously difficult season for Glasgow because of the restrictions in Scotland and the lack of practice time and all that stuff that is going on. But I'm telling you now, if I'm looking for somebody to sign somebody for a job next year, leaving 4 weeks before the end of the season is a massive red flag against them, as far as I'm concerned. So Delph, and the world is bigger than the BBL, right? So let's be clear. I mean, there's plenty of places whereby basketball players, particularly if you're 7 foot, or particularly if you went to North Carolina, can get jobs. So they won't, I'd imagine, miss the BBL. They'll find somewhere else to play. But even so, if I'm doing my due diligence on them as a coach in Germany or in Sweden or in Japan or wherever, and I'm reading the paper, I'm speaking to someone from Glasgow, I'm thinking, lots of upside, but really, is this guy in it for the long run? That might be harsh, but it's March the 27th, March the 28th now.
Yeah.
When did they finish? April the 21st? 3 weeks? Yeah. Really?
As we say, it could be. It is March the 28th, so it could be a financial issue, couldn't it?
Well, you wouldn't expect to see players saying thank you in those circumstances. Well, you'd expect a very quiet silence. Obviously Glasgow have given up on the playoffs. From their perspective, the kind of the season is dead. I get that. There's no fans coming in, so I'm not worried about being booed off the court, of the fans ripping up the season tickets or anything like that. I think it takes, it hurts Gareth's progression as a coach because it takes away the guys he's been building around, he's been playing. So, any kind of momentum that they've built up, and they have been playing better, now dissipates. I know I don't know how many games they've got left. I know they've still got to play Newcastle twice. 9 games left, so it's the third of the season. I'm disappointed about that. I didn't know that. I'm disappointed about that for Glasgow.
Right, let's go. 2 more games to get through. Neither of them massively close. Cheshire 87, Newcastle 103. Obviously, Ross was out after that injury we talked about earlier. Gordon doing some damage, hitting threes, dunking the ball. Newcastle get out to a flying start. They're 17-6 up. There were early fouls for Jalen Hayes and NBA. Yeah. Newcastle 12 of 15 in the first quarter and just...
Yeah, I think they were 7 of 8 from 3 in the first half. And I think they were shooting some ridiculous numbers.
75%
actually shooting
at halftime.
Yeah, actually shooting the ball probably too well because it wasn't sustainable, and they kind of had a bit of a dip at the beginning of the third quarter. As soon as it was established on the Statcast that on the broadcast that Ross wasn't playing, I quickly popped on to Bet365. It seemed to me that was a hammer blow in relation to Cheshire, because it gave them kind of McCall, who is a ball handler, but he's a shot maker primarily. He's not a setup guy. And then Farrell Gordon. And also it meant that they had real difficulties in matching up with Fletcher and Edwards. And that's the biggest thing for defending Newcastle, is matching up with Fletcher and Edwards, because they create so much of their team's offense. And I think between them over the weekend, they will have had something in the region of 45 assists across 2 games, which is just a ridiculous number. And everybody else is making shots. So if Fluger comes in, he makes some shots. And Gordon, as you say, starts off by draining threes. And it's going to be a long night. A couple of things interesting about Newcastle. One, they've kind of tweaked their rotation, I think, for the better, insofar as that Sayers is starting. And Fluger is actually coming in less as kind of a wing, but he's coming in as a ball handler. They're using him to initiate the offense when he comes in. And I think that's a better use of his skill set, because he is capable of creating for others. And then if you ignore him, that's when he'll shoot the ball. He's not a great shooter, but he's a good passer and smart screen role player and a good defender. So having that kind of matchup helps them. Having that kind of mix-up helps them, because it means that they've always got another ball handler on the court with either Fletcher or Edwards. But they're still having to play Fletcher and Edwards the whole second half of games, and you wonder how sustainable that's going to be, down the stretch when it really matters. So they've probably got to work a little bit on finding a way to get them some rest. Cheshire, it was just tough. I mean, this league often comes down to who you play. It's not who you play, but it's when you play them. So this, Newcastle have come off a situation whereby they They lost a number of games in a row, 7 games out of 10, including 2 home games against Sheffield when Sheffield were flying, when they didn't have Justin Gordon. And you think, oh, that's not fair. Oh my God, we couldn't get a win, all that stuff. But then suddenly they end up playing London on the back of London winning the trophy with Justin Robinson with a broken nose. And then Cheshire on the back of Karen Ross landing on his foot and not being able to play. So it all balances out. So, you know, so they end up getting the right side of that equation. They are when they are not being defended and when their bigs are making shots, they're a formidable offensive team. Their defense is still hit and miss, I think, Newcastle, and that's probably what will hold them back a little bit. Cheshire, they just need to get healthy. You know, William, Lufford Deju, you know, they're playing with 6 guys and the assistant coach. And 2 of those guys are 7 foot tall, or 6'10", 7 foot tall, and weren't really playing together much. So you can't judge them. You can't judge them. They have got to where they've got to their own endeavours and their own efforts. And they've got a couple of weeks now, probably without Ross, to take things in and get him back for the playoffs, and then see if they can make any noise. But you know, it's just one of those games. You just saw the way it was going to go.
Well, they had a little bit of a response in the third quarter, but they got it to 12.
Well, they did, but I thought Newcastle came out beginning of the third quarter like a team that had made every shot in the first quarter, first half, and they missed a cut and they missed some jump shots, and they got a bit sloppy, and Maxwell threw the ball away from under the basket, and Fletcher got a little bit irritated, and you could see they were just beginning to chip away at each other a little bit. But Edwards made a couple of plays, and it never got. And Cheshire missed some foul shots, and it never kind of got to kind of less than 12. And then, you know, I think it was a kind of game that Newcastle kind of knew they were going to win, and Cheshire knew they weren't going to win. Yeah, albeit they tried.
Let's go down the road to Manchester for the final game of the weekend. Giants 80, Plymouth Raiders 101. Grand Force still out. eBay into the starting lineup for Plymouth Raiders, which was an interesting move. Pretty high scoring in the early stages. Not a great deal between them, but Giants got the momentum towards the end of the first half.
Yeah, and Plymouth are interesting because no way in the world should they be giving up 51 or 53 points in a half or whatever it was. I didn't watch much of the first half of this game. I was kind of transfixed with the Newcastle game. But on checking out the numbers and seeing Manchester scoring that amount of points, I was a little bit concerned what PJ would say to them at halftime. And I think it became quite clear in the third quarter exactly what PJ had said to them at halftime. Because
3 points in 8 minutes is what the Giants.
Yeah, and I watched. To be fair, once I realised it was close, and because there was a bit of a gap between the games, I was able to watch most of the third quarter of that game. And actually, the game, which is when Plymouth broke it open, and they broke it open with their defence, and they got to the rim remorselessly. So McGill got to the rim, Marcel got to the rim, Will Neighbour got to the rim. They got out and run, and they broke Manchester. They just broke them with their defence, and you know that's Plymouth's selling point. They are, by quite a large margin, the most effective defensive team in the league. That's on numbers, not just on what I'm seeing. You know, their defensive rating is higher than any other team in the league, and considerably. And PJ knows that is their calling card. And he was annoyed after they gave up 52 points in the trophy final at halftime. You heard that on the TV. And I think he would have been apoplectic at halftime in this game, not having watched much of the first half. But getting into a running game with Manchester is just literally the only way that Plymouth could lose that game. And for half of the game, they did. Now, what happens then is, of course, Plymouth have got another gear. So Manchester are going in at half-time feeling quite good about themselves. They've got a new coach. Their offense is working. They're all making shots. And they think we can keep going on this, you know, we got a shot in this game. But Plymouth, like all good teams, and this is what's going to separate Plymouth and has them with a realistic top 3 or even top 2 slot chance now. They could finish second in the league this year, Plymouth. Is that they can flick that switch defensively and separate themselves. And now AJ will not want them flicking that switch defensively. He will want that switch on all the time.
From the beginning.
From the beginning of games. And people say, well, why can't it be on? And it's a strange thing. It can just be the mindset of players. It can be the respect that your players have for the opposition players. It can be that players need to see other guys making shots in their face before they believe that they can actually make those shots. No matter how much video you've shown them, and it can also be the fact that you're coming off playing a number of games, and these games are coming day in, day out now. But that switch, that ability to shut teams down, and with Manchester, the advantage is when you shut Manchester down, you get out and run because they don't get back. And that blew the game open. And I think they were up by 15, and then I clicked back on with about 5 minutes to go, and they're up by 26 or something like that. Which point I started making the dinner.
It was a 23-5 third quarter. If you stretch it out in 14 minutes, first 14 minutes of the second half, it was 40-12 in favour of.
And it's the 12. It's always the 12.
Having been 53-49 at half time, it goes to 65-89.
Now, of course, against that, you have to give Manchester a little bit. That was their third game in 5 days.
5 days,
and they hadn't played for 10 days beforehand, and they're still playing down without a big body. And, shots will stop falling when your legs are tired, because those guys are playing big minutes, and they've been through, no doubt, some pretty substantial training sessions with a new coach as well, which you wouldn't ordinarily go through in March. So I don't want to kind of rain on Manchester too much, because, coming up against a motivated Plymouth defence on the, the second half of the third game in 5 days with some travel thrown in as well, it's tough. So, they've still got a shot, Manchester. If they can find some form of defence that can get them through some possessions, be it a zone, be it a trick zone, or be it some form of matchups. If Lloyd can come up with something out of his bag to get them to get matchup, be it fronting the post that I talked about before, be it anything, then they can score. If they could turn teams over, they would score a lot in transition, but they just struggle to do so.
So the Giants are 7-16 in the league. The playoff line is at 12 defeats right now. There's Worcester, Bristol, and Surrey, who are the wrong side of the line at the minute, all have 12 defeats. They've got 7 games left. The Giants, they're going to need to win 5 of them.
Maybe it's just that when you get, when you're at the bottom end of the season, the bottom end of the table, it's kind of the other way around. You have to count the wins, because those teams are less likely to win games than the teams at the top.
So the Giants have 7 wins and the Flyers have 8.
Yeah.
The Flyers in the playoff position.
And the Flyers have got 3 games in hand, 4 games in hand.
They've got 10 games left. Giants have 7 games left.
So they got 3 more games to play. Now, the fact that you've got all these games to play is not necessarily going to be easy, because these, I think the season finishes April the 24th, something like that. Maybe the 27th.
It seems to have just expanded a little bit into the week after the weekend.
I know there's some
some road games late.
Yeah, Jeff King on the Eagles broadcast on Friday night made a veiled reference to some new playoff format, which hasn't been made public yet. So maybe they're pushing the playoffs back a little bit to fit all those games in.
No, they're not.
But, no, they're not. Okay, fair enough. But it's, you see, that's another veil. I can't get in the loop here. I need to get in the loop. It's not good. But anyway, that's still, 10 games in a month.
Yeah.
10 games in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So in many ways, playing 7 games in 4 weeks is an advantage to playing 10. It gives you a chance to play. So I don't know if Bristol are going to win, 4 out of the last 10. Maybe they will. But it would be above the ratio of games that they've won so far. Yeah. So, Bristol and then, Worcester got a massive win today. Yeah. So that really kind of solidifies them. But then there's Surrey, and Surrey are a team that's just playing with momentum, with confidence. And I think, if you're looking at Surrey, Bristol and Manchester on any given night, who do you think is most likely to beat somebody? It's probably Surrey. It's probably Surrey. So, yeah, it'll be intriguing to see who manages to scrape into they're getting hammered by Leicester. And that's your Ryan Richards line. Topped.
So let's touch on the league table before we go, because as you say, for most teams, they're inside the final 10. London still have 12 and Surrey still have 11, but everybody else has 7 or 8, 9. Leicester over the hill and gone away, we feel. 19-3, that 5 is their magic number.
Lock, you call it. Yeah, it's done. I mean, the biggest thing for them is getting the wins quickly.
Yeah.
Um,
In theory, it could finish next week. In theory, because Lions play 3 times this week and Leicester play 2 times this week, and Lions play
Leicester,
2 teams that they've lost to and one that they beat by a point. I can't
Leicester,
see it happening, but you
hang
never
on,
know.
I'm not sure that's right. What about Plymouth and Newcastle?
No, because oh yes, you might be right on that. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I think
21,
Plymouth.
21 8.
I
Yes,
think,
yeah. Sorry,
yeah, I
my
think it's
mistake.
probably
Yeah,
one more
yeah.
week.
One more
Yeah,
week. One more
but
week.
they can certainly get rid
Or a
of
few more days,
a few
probably.
more days after that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but in reality, I think 23 wins is the absolute mark for
Yeah.
Leicester. Albeit London. I mean, London, we were talking about London winning. London are 11-7.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're talking about, London might go on a run. London might do this. London are 11-7. You know, there's nothing in that record which says they're going to win 12 straight games.
No.
So you have to discount them, I think, because they've just got so many games to play. And quite clearly, they're going to be focused on both the playoffs and their internal issues. So that's them done. So I think it comes in, and they've Leicester have the head-to-head on both Plymouth and Newcastle. So in reality, that's 6. So if Leicester get to 22 wins, then that's it. So that's 3 more wins. That's without the opposition having any losses.
Yeah. So we think Newcastle, Plymouth, and London make up the top 4 in whatever order.
I think so. I think you might have kind of thought maybe Newcastle might have been ripe to drop down, but they've obviously had a good weekend and they've got a fairly soft schedule finishing the season. They certainly got 7 games left. I think they've got Manchester twice, Glasgow twice, maybe Surrey. Sorry, Manchester once, Glasgow twice, Surrey twice, maybe Worcester and Leicester at home, and Leicester might have won the league by then. So, I don't think Newcastle will drop out the top 4. Actually, I can see Plymouth climbing all the way to 2nd because Plymouth have the head-to-head on Newcastle. I can see London dropping to 4th. Really, I just because Newcastle have the head-to-head on London. They're only 1 loss apart, and just the amount of games that London have to play. You look at the London team. If you take, if Justin's out for another week or 2, you look at the London team and what they have there. They have they have 4 high-level BBL players in Justin Robinson, Liggins, Orlando Parker, and Dirk Williams, and everybody else is kind of something of a role player. Some are more effective role players than others. Now, if you thrust all of those role players into kind of a situation whereby they're having to be the main guys, and they're playing 12 games in 27 days or something like that, then they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle because they're going to have so many combinations of people. They're going to get twisty with each other. They're going to be waiting for the playoffs. And as I say, they're 11-7. We were talking about this team as a super team. They're 11. They've only won 11 league games all season. So they haven't prioritized the league to the point whereby, you can see them finishing maybe 18-12 or something like that. And I don't think 18-12 is going to get them in the top 3. So Leicester, London in the semi-final.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be.
Bring it on.
So after
that's my prediction. Go for it.
After that, it's quite a morass for the other places. I don't get even into sort of discussing what order any of them will finish.
No, you can't, because ultimately I don't think those teams will really be overcommitted to kind of securing the difference between 6th or 7th. I mean, if 5th gets you London.
The interesting thing is, with Surrey only being 1 loss behind, actually, you've got to be worried about not finishing 9th.
Well, that's the thing. You need to get. You need to get probably. You need to get your 14 wins. I think if you get your 14 wins, you should be in. Yeah. It's difficult to see 9 teams getting 15 wins. Yeah. So 14 wins in the head-to-head should get you maybe 13 wins. But Sheffield will win enough games to get in. Yeah. Cheshire will win enough games to get in. So that's 2 spots. And then you're left, and then Worcester on today's showing should do the same. They played so well today. Provided Jordan Williams stays healthy, they shouldn't have an issue. Anderson comes back. So yeah, but where they finish 5, 6, 7, I'm not sure they'll be that bothered. They'll be more bothered about being healthy going into the playoffs.
Yeah, promises to be quite an interesting playoff series. We've got a few more weeks of the regular season to cover first of all, but we'll leave it for tonight. And thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again next Sunday. Have a great week. Goodbye.